We're also waiting to see who will advance to the final run for the Los Angeles mayor and California governor's votes because they still cannot finish voting.
It's unbelievable. Doug Lazader is live in Washington with the latest on each race this morning. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning. These are slow-motion nail-biters underway right now in California. We knew some of these races would be close, these two in particular, and we knew California takes a long time to count votes, but nevertheless, this has really been something to watch. Let's start with the race for governor, which will come down to the top two candidates in last week's primary. Democrat Javier Becerra has advanced to one of those slots in the November election, we think, but with just 72% of ballots accounted at this point. It is still a contest for second place between Republican Steve Hilton, who's now in the lead over Democrat Tom Steyer, and Hilton is frustrated at how long this is taking.
Well, it'd be lovely if someone could explain how the process works, because to most people it seems completely insane. Yes, still counting ballots. There's two things going on here. You've got the late arriving mail ballots. You're allowed to vote by mail, and as long as you post it by Election Day, they count it up to 7 days after Election Day. That's next Tuesday, so that's one category. But the bigger category is the fact that you've got still millions of ballots in these vote centers that are sitting there right now in boxes not being counted.
And the race for L.A. mayor, even closer. Incumbent Karen Bass will advance, but she's facing a runoff because she could not muster 50% of the vote. And this is a real horse race now to challenge her in the general election, with far-left Democratic Socialist Nithya Raman just overtaking a former reality TV star Spencer Pratt. That just shifted, but with 83% of the votes counted in that race, it's still too close to call. Pratt had been leading Raman, but these mail-in ballots are counted in the order in which they're received, and many of these last-minute ballots are apparently breaking heavily for Raman.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to do my best this morning to have some composure and no mercy for the communists in Los Angeles and the Democrats in California. We're going to use this as an instructive learning opportunity for what Democrats plan on doing to our nation if they ever seize power again. It's important to know thy enemy and to know what they are doing. And we hate to brag, but we were early. We were right. 6 months ago, we traveled to LA and told you exactly what was going to happen. We'll show you on the show. And more importantly, we'll talk about how to fix it with our illustrious guests today. Will Chamberlain will be joining the program, expert attorney and extremely sophisticated mind when it comes to solving election fraud, as will the GOP chairwoman of Los Angeles, to give us any type of update as to how they're going to fight this. Is there any way to fight it? The feds are starting to. Donald Trump is absolutely smashing through the election fraud wall, smashing the mics of NBC News as he storms off. We'll have that clip for you. Today is Monday, June 8th, 2026. The California ballot dumps got them exactly what they wanted. A dirty communist versus another dirty DEI communist in California. Then the machine doesn't have to work as hard to keep power in LA. That is exactly the purpose and the point. They take away a massive spotlight that Spencer Pratt had shown on what Democrats were doing in Los Angeles. That was the purpose here. Libtards are going on TV, like I saw it on CNN this morning. Oh no, Democrats wanted Spencer Pratt. No, they didn't. They didn't want Spencer Pratt. They needed controlled opposition, which is what you get with Nikki Raman. You can't do a business with a guy like Spencer Pratt. You burned his house down. You nearly killed his family. Trump roast reporter walks off TV. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Benny Johnson. We'll have Will Chamberlain and Roxanne Hogue joining the program momentarily. First, get your house in order. American Financing certainly is the place to do that. If you have high interest credit card debt, you must lock in, get out of that debt. The market has gone haywire, ups and downs. Apparently, we're going to have a peace deal this week. Who knows? But what I do know is this. You need to get your own house in order. You can't control what's happening in the great beyond in this wide, insane world. Nobody can even control what's happening inside of the LA elections, although we'll show you exactly what happened in the LA elections. Ladies and gentlemen, don't get robbed of your future, just like Spencer Pratt was robbed. Call American Financing today, 888-528-1219. That's 888-528-1219, americanfinancing.net/Benny. ALX, I need something right now. I just thought about this. Please get me the clip of CNN going after Nick Shirley on the ground in Minneapolis. Give me that clip. I need that clip right away. I need that clip immediately. Because I'm gonna show how the principles apply to the right and the left in circumstances of fraud. So whether it's election fraud or whether it's Somali fraud with daycares, the way that journalists cover this, thank you very much, the way that journalists cover this is going to be incredibly instructive because it establishes why what we're doing here is so important. Why this program, the culture that we're building, the culture of truth, why this is so critical and important. I want you to pop it up as soon as you got it, Klein. Load her in. Let's go. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Wow, that was really fast. Okay, so CNN here in this clip, we don't got to show it. I'm sure it's like 4 minutes long, but let me just toggle through this thing. So CNN goes and covers Nick Shirley interviewing Somalis and exposing Somali fraud in Minneapolis. At first I thought, wow, like CNN's actually covering the Somali fraud. But it turns out what CNN was actually doing was covering up for the Somalis and attacking Nick Shirley. And how is this related to election fraud in California? Well, it is directly related. You'll be able to see here what happened with this CNN reporter. They sent, of course, their no-name, lowest-tier journalist out to do this. What happened here was this journalist goes into the street, attacks Nick Shirley and says, where's your proof of fraud? Where's your proof? Where's your proof? Where's your proof of fraud? Even though he had literally exposed it, everybody could see. Everybody could see these were fake daycares. The Leering Center isn't real. These are empirical observations. We're going to talk about mathematical, statistical, and empirical this morning. The mathematical, it goes to HHS when they can actually run the books and the DOJ and show you that none of the numbers add up, right? The Somalis weren't feeding children. They weren't serving children in these daycares. They're fake daycares. Nobody bothered to check. These are observable and circumstantial, what Nick Shirley is showing you. So it's like, don't believe your eyes and ears kind of thing. Here's CNN attacking Nick Shirley in the street. Unmute this.
Indictments, the cases have been going on, for years.
And why did I show up one day in Minnesota and go to all these daycares, no children, they're receiving millions of dollars. We uncovered nearly $110 million in fraud in one day.
How do you know that all the allegations that you're making are true?
There it is, right there. Okay, so I need you to remember this because they just did the same thing with Trump. I need you to understand what we are up against. You have to realize the game that is played here. So Nick Shirley has the most viral video in the world. He shows all the fraud. It's empirical. It's observable. You can check it mathematically and statistically in the books. You can actually go in and find the hard evidence of fraud. But CNN they're the journalists. They're attacking Nick Shirley for his observations that he made on camera that are irrefutable. They're attacking him going, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? Instead of CNN going and doing the work, wouldn't that be the point of CNN is to go investigate the fraud themselves? Let's go ahead and check and see. Does CNN investigate fraud? How do they do it?
We showed you guys what was happening, and then you guys can go ahead and make your own analysis.
We're coming so we can make our own analysis. Are you 100% sure you're true?
Yeah, I am 100% sure I'm true.
CNN is looking into.
First off, are you 100% sure you're true? Go ask your wife that tonight and see what happens. You get a black eye. What kind of question is that? Are you 100% sure you're true? I'm telling you, they sent the bottom of the barrel from CNN here to Minneapolis. But here, watch what happens. Here's this dorky CNN reporter in her hotel room, in her $150 a night hotel room, doing her investigation. Watch this.
Shirley's claims.
Hi, Hi, my name's Whitney Wild. I'm a correspondent for CNN.
We reached out to several of the daycares featured in the now viral video. Only one daycare facility answered and said they are a legitimate business.
Have you seen
That's it. That's it. That's what CNN did.
the videos, purporting that some of these daycares don't have kids inside?
Minnesota Republican.
They didn't even leave the answer on tape. Do you understand the game we're up against? Now, load up. Now, throw me Kristen Welker. Let's go. Do you understand the game we're up against? Because we're gonna talk the California. We're gonna talk the California ballot fraud, the observable, but also statistical and mathematical, like empirical data that shows that they stole the election. But you have to understand what we're up against and why what we do on this program is so important and so critical to the future of this nation. I'm not trying to gas ourselves up, but please know that we are up against a $1 trillion propaganda machine that is there to deceive you and to attack us, you, me, this movement of truth. So Nick Shirley shows the fraud in Minneapolis, CNN attacks him for it, and then does their own investigation by defending the fraudsters. None of the fraudsters picked up their phones. That didn't bother CNN at all. They just called them and said, "Are you committing fraud?" No. Okay. See, we did an investigation. We did one. We did an investigation. We did it. Oh, makes me so angry. So this is exactly the game that Kristen Welker played with Trump. So before we had the new numbers out of Los Angeles, where no name, no energy, no support, no voters, no future, Nikki Rahman somehow miraculously and historically, because this never happened before in American history, overtook Spencer Pratt in the small hours of the evening last night. Before that happened, Donald Trump smelled this thing from 1,000 yards away and went beast mode on NBC yesterday. Actually smashed their microphone. He was so angry. I've never seen anything like it. Here's President Trump. Kristen Welker plays the same game with him. We've all seen the fraud. It's empirical. It's observable. It's statistically an abomination. It's mathematically impossible. But Kristen Welker, instead of going out and doing the investigation on behalf of the American people and saying nobody believes your elections, she goes, "Where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? Where's your evidence?" As though it's up to Nick Shirley and Donald Trump to sit there and provide them the evidence. You're the media. Calm down. You're the media. It's your job to go out and say, the American public doesn't believe your elections. Show me all the ballots. Show me this. Why are you doing it this way? Why could Peru had an election last night? They counted 27 million votes in one night. Democrats had only like 3 million votes in this entire election. It is now day 7. If you include early votes, they've been voting for 3 months in California. If you include early and mail-in votes. 3 months of voting, they can't count 3 million votes. They do it on purpose. They do this on purpose. And then they ask Trump to prove the fraud. Well, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? Instead of them, do you understand the game that's played? Now, before I play this clip, if President Trump, if a right-winger, if there were a bunch of, this would never happen, right? Because we're all Christians, but that this isn't part of our culture. Like thievery isn't baked into our culture. It is. In Somali Islam, it is. It's literally hard-coded into piracy culture. But let's say there were a bunch of daycares in, the Redis County in Alabama, and they were bilking the taxpayers. Do you think that Kristen Welker and CNN would investigate that, and they were all of them were like MAGA hats, and Trump's DHS and Trump's HUD were just stroking checks to these people left and right, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars? Do you think that would interest the media? Of course it would. Do you think that if right-wing candidates, MAGA candidates were winning, were coming in third on election day, but then winning in landslides in statistically and mathematically impossible probabilities, winning every single ballot drop after Election Day by totals that are eye-watering that would make dictators blush? Do you think that Kristen Welker wouldn't investigate that? That they wouldn't be looking at every election official, naming them, shaming them, filing lawsuits on behalf of media companies, which they do that? They'd be doing everything. They certainly wouldn't be looking at the Democrat who got the election stolen from them and going, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? No, they'd be doing their job. They'd be doing, like, this is the information warfare. This is the info war. This is what we're up against. Play the clip.
In the Oval Office, what they did to the lives of people, they destroyed people. They sent people to jail who did nothing wrong.
All right, just to be very clear, there's no evidence of what you're saying. But let me ask you about Todd Blanche. Let me ask you about Todd Blanche.
Listen to me.
Let's talk about Todd Blanche.
There's tremendous evidence. There's nothing but evidence. The election was rigged. It was a dirty election. And it's happening again right now in California.
You've never presented evidence.
It's happening right now in California. Right now, it's look at what's happening in California.
Where's the evidence to that?
It's
the
4
Republicans
days.
are doing well in
California. No, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days, and they aren't even close to coming up with it. You know why they're doing that? Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support
all I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen to people, and let's see what happens.
But, sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes in California.
Do you think it's appropriate that they have an election, and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
really.
Let's
well,
continue.
You play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play right into their hands with this rap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But, Mr. President,
you know why I got that? Because you have no
evidence.
credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd Blanche.
You have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk about
your elections in this country. We're like a third world country. Your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, and so is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But, Mr. President,
you're one-sided crooked networks. Right. Let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin. I traveled
in the rain.
I know. I traveled all the way to
an
Wisconsin.
Hour, on and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what?
Mr. President,
a country can never be great with a dishonest press.
We traveled all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
Okay, so, by the way, you can see here, absolute alpha move by Trump. Not only does he rip the microphone off and throw it on the ground, you can see here the move, rips the mic off, chucks it on the ground, but then Trump smashes the mic with his foot right here. Let's have a listen.
With a dishonest
we traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
Here we go.
For this interview.
And crush the mic. Yeah, there you go. I just like it. Oh, please, Mr. President, we traveled all the way to Wisconsin for you. Oh, please pick me. It's like the ugly girl at the bar. Oh, please. I got all dressed up. Okay, enough. I'm not joking. There it is. Perfect. Beautiful. Yeah. Trump has every reason to be furious because of the way that not only these elections are run or the fraud is run in this country, but because of the way that the media has zero interest in covering or exposing any of it. This is what we're up against. I say all that to say this. Thank you for your support. Because we called this thing. We called this from 1,000 yards away, dude. We went out to LA first week of the year, 6 months ago. Check the timestamp. We went out to LA and we exposed the homeless industrial complex fraud that is being, to their great humiliation, funded by Donald Trump's housing and urban development. That gives untold billions to California for their homeless industrial complex. Your money is squandered on this. Your money is used to rig these elections. It's something that we are going to go hard in on today.
Welcome to California.
We went out there. We went to Skid Row. We explained how this was going to work. We explained, and it was not a fun shoot because it's filthy and you smell the rotting flesh and you get attacked. Klein knows this. We were filming from our car. Homeless people came up, smashed our window in our car, kicked the side of our vehicle, attacked us for going there with a camera. It was filthy and dangerous and disgusting. And the governor of the state viciously libeled me and attacked my family for going out there. Like Gavin Newsom was taking time out of his day to come after me because I didn't stand in line with NBC News and CNN and everybody else and look the other way and say, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? The evidence is sitting right in front of your face. Here's what we found when we went out to California. We found a system that registers voters without ID. They'll register voters to anywhere. A stop sign, an underpass, the dumpster behind a Burger King parking lot. It's designed in order to get as many ballots into the system as possible so they can control the outcomes. Homeless people all get registered to vote. George Soros, NGOs, and dark money left-wing groups go and register homeless people. They feed them crack. They feed them drugs. They pay them. This all on camera. We have federal indictments for this behavior. They pay them to register to vote so they can have the ballot in the system. They never deliver the ballot. The homeless person doesn't vote. They just need the ballot. They fill it out. They ballot harvest it. You can drop off as many ballots as you want. No questions asked. You can bring in a garbage bag, and people do, full of ballots. All you need is the name and the address. And what did we find? We found toilets that had 26 people registered to them. Street corners, underpasses, bridges. We exposed it all. And we said, this is how California is going to rig their votes. Not only do they get extra electoral seats because the census is going to count all these homeless people, but they also are able to have as many ballots as they need in the systems in LA because they have so many homeless people in LA. 100,000 homeless people in LA. We called it and we said, this is what they're going to do. And we were right. We got destroyed for this. They attacked us. You know, it turns out that they only attack you when you're over the target. Why would Gavin Newsom take time out of his day to go after my family? To go after me? Why would you? Why? Why would you go ad hominem attacks? Like YouTuber, dude posts memes. Why would Gavin Newsom take the time to go to, because we were over the target and we're the only people who did it. The only people. Nick Shirley also went out to California, did amazing work. Obviously, we love Nick on this program. He's on a lot. James O'Keefe has since gone out. They've both been savagely and viciously attacked by the governor until James O'Keefe showed on camera them paying for the ballots. They paid for the ballot. James got it on camera. I don't have the same undercover camera operation as James does. They got it on camera. But we're the Pied Piper. And these rats, they followed us out there, and you could see it. You can see it in our documentary. Anyway, we were 6 months early. We showed what they were paying per homeless person. Obviously, there's a huge grift here, but this is exactly what happened to Spencer Pratt. Look at this. Here's the election results. There it is. Nikki Rahman's in green. Spencer Pratt's in orange. Now, the law of averages. Let's just talk really quickly here about the math behind all of this. We'll talk about the empirical, observable realities. We'll talk about the mathematical, statistical realities. Law of averages is a frequency of a certain event eventually evens out and aligns with their underlying probability over a period of time. This is a popular everyday principle that is used regularly, especially in statistics. So what you're seeing here on the first day of counting is what the true vote was. This was the true will of the people. This reflected all polling. Nikki Rahman got blown out during the debates. She has no support. She had no one. She was paying people to come to her rallies. That was well documented by the LA Times. She had no name. Nobody knew how to pronounce her name. She's an embarrassing track record as a city councilwoman. She was in charge of the homelessness in LA, solving that problem. Well, that's convenient, isn't it? Because the law of averages actually held on day 2 of counting. Here we go. Election night. Then day 2 of counting, June 4th. Look at this. It actually held. Nikki Rahman actually underperformed. Like Spencer Pratt did great. And so did Karen Bass. So Nikki Rahman's actually faltering. That's why Nikki Rahman, just so that we understand the time frame that we're at here. This is why Nikki Rahman was giving blubbering, crying, sobbing speeches, apologizing to her family and friends for failing so badly. She conceded on election night. Let me say it again. She conceded the race. She said, hey, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm finished. That's what she said through tears. Then what happens? Oh my, here we go. June 4th through 5th. Suddenly, magically, Nikki Rahman starts winning every single late vote dump. Once they realized where they needed to get to with Spencer Pratt, once they had the money, once they had the target, they knew exactly how many of those unaccountable, unnamed, unmarked, unsigned for, homeless ballots to dump into the race. That's why the number of ballots that needed to be counted kept increasing exponentially. You know that there's 40% more people voted in this election than voted in 2022 in LA. Yet LA has lost millions of residents. How is that possible? You're telling me that Nikki Rahman and Karen Bass just inspired so many people to turn out? They had a 40% increase in turnout? Bull. They had a 40% increase in the machine turning the ballots out. That's what happened. And that's what's happening here. And then you can see with every single dump, Nikki Rahman kept winning. Now suddenly she's beating Karen Bass. Well, that's really interesting because libtards will tell you and they'll tell me, well, what's going on here is that Democrats just like late voting and voting by mail. Okay. Well, that entire, retarded theory is destroyed by the fact that none of these late breaking votes went for Karen Bass. You can see Karen Bass actually getting lower in her percentages of the late breaking votes while Nikki Rahman skyrocketed. So wait a second, just Nikki Rahman Democrats vote by mail, not Karen Bass Democrats? That don't make no sense. Look at this. Karen Bass' percentage of the late drop versus Nikki Rahman's versus Spencer Pratt's. Oh, okay, just certain types of Democrats. The whole thing makes absolutely no sense. Not statistically, and certainly not empirically. Because what we were able to observe is that this has never happened in American history. ChatGPT, Grok, all the AIs that we asked, we said, has there ever been a third place candidate that has been able to win subsequently every single drop 7 days straight, get 40% of the next drop, blowing out the laws of average, the laws of averages, blowing out all mathematical and statistical probability, and then getting to the point where she actually overtakes the second place candidate? And the answer was definitively no. Demonstrably no. That's never happened in American history. There is a psyop that is going on so hard right now that says, this is just how LA does it. Nope, it's never happened before. But get a load of this. The second she overtook him, the instant she overtook, this was last night, the instant that they had enough motor ballots to pump into the system, they announced her the winner. They called it instantly. It was the same second. Ding. The face of fraud, the face of absolute fraudulence. She wasn't born in LA. She wasn't born in California. Nikki Rahman wasn't born in America. Nikki Rahman went to the East Coast for school. She's Ivy League educated. She has no connection to California. She's been a complete dumpster of a career. Nobody liked her. Nobody showed up for her. Yet we're supposed to believe this happened? No. No, you have to be brain dead, functionally brain dead, to believe that somehow this is real and not fraud. It's exactly what the president is saying this morning. Donald Trump, no way this could have happened. Rigged election. Fury erupts over California elections after woke socialist candidate squeaks by Spencer Pratt in airtight race. Oh, really? Okay. Trump blasts crooked California elections. Look at this. Here it is. This is what I wanted to show you. Look at her go. Look at her go. If you know Los Angeles, so the gold is Spencer Pratt. These are going to be like the, more suburban, nicer areas of LA. Palisades, Beverly Hills, Spencer Pratt won. These are going to be the ghetto, black areas of LA. Truly like the places where you go to get killed. Karen Bass, of course, wins there. They have complete and total voter fraud operations throughout all of these. These are all like dense urban housing, and they just go hoover up all the ballots. Where's Nikki Raman win? Well, she doesn't win her district. Nikki Raman lost her district. This is again how this operation works. Nikki Raman is so unpopular, she lost her own district. Where did she win? Well, if you know downtown LA, you'll know what this is. Nikki Raman won Skid Row. Nikki Raman won where they're shoving all the homeless people. Nikki Raman won the homeless encampments. I couldn't believe it when I was actually looking at the data here. These are the only places that Nikki Raman won. Spencer Pratt, a net swing of more than 43,000 votes since Tuesday. 43,000. Where have I seen this number before? This is from Nikki Raman's own webpage. She was in charge of the homeless problem in LA. She wrote this. We have 43,000 people that experience homelessness at any given night in Los Angeles. It's very convenient there. Very convenient that. So Nikki Raman's pulling big numbers from Skid Row. Sickening. Wow. It's pretty interesting. The density view. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. I've been just absolutely on a rampage here. I want to get to Will Chamberlain. My apologies for my rants. How do you register to vote? A gym card, an employer ID, a credit card, a prescription drug. Label insurance card. Got it. All of them could be provided by the state directly to a homeless person. Where's your white pill? I don't know. Let's do a white pill here. Here's the white pill, ladies and gentlemen. This Spencer Pratt post. Klein, give me a white pill. Spencer Pratt says they're not the only ones who know where to find the votes. Okay. I guess we'll see. Nikki Raman has now been declared the second place candidate. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. On to Will Chamberlain from the Article 3 Project, who's been very patient as I rant here. I'm angry about it all. And I also want to explain how the system works and how we're thankful to you for supporting our program because we were right. You hate to brag, and nobody likes a braggart, but we collectively were right. We had the correct instinct. We went out, we exposed this, we showed you what was going to happen 6 months ago. The only one. And we thank you. We could want to do a lot more of that. Anyway, Will Chamberlain calling it from the nosebleeds from the Article 3 Project. Let's go. Yo, Will, what's up, man? I'm sorry. I'm on a bender this morning.
You're fine. I mean, I used to live in downtown LA, and I mean, if you know anything about Skid Row, nobody lives there except homeless people. Like, it's completely filled. It's the biggest homeless encampment in the world, probably, or at least certainly in the United States. So nobody lives there. Everybody who does live there is a drug addict, basically.
Yes.
Because if you are actually just homeless and trying to recover, whatever temporary financial issue, you would be in a shelter. The people who are living on the street in Skid Row, they're addicts. These people are not voting on their own accord. So if there's a huge impile of ballots from Skid Row, that means that is, that really that's a good place to start for Bill Asaley and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Okay. So, I would really like to know how would you carve up this whale? We have this density map. This is amazing. Can you pop that up, please? I don't know if you got it. If you got it, Klein, Throw up that density map, please. This is unbelievable. So you can see where the Nikki Raman votes, the map I was showing, it's very unique. Like you could see that Nikki Raman only won. Look at those spikes. Look at those spikes. The incumbent didn't get any spikes like that. Look at those spikes. These are, Los Angeles. These are the homeless encampment areas of downtown LA with skyscraper level spikes for Nikki Raman, just in these small, extremely dense areas. It just screams fraud. It screams fraud. There's no other explanation for this, Will, or am I wrong?
I mean, that's honestly, I think it's there's this possible explanation that Nithya Raman socialist voters are just so happen to be the coalition of people that happens to vote late by mail. Okay, like that's possible. I mean, the basic approach of people who are criticizing this, or people criticizing Republicans for taking issue with it, is I think their theory is as long as you can come up with a possible theory of how the election was won legitimately, then you're not allowed to question it, which is kind of the reverse of what it actually should be. I've had a lot of arguments with people. What's happened is so many liberals are doing this, like from Tim Miller to Ted Lieu. I say, I put out a thread where I basically said, your elections lack so much integrity. I don't have a theory of how they were stolen. I just presume they were stolen because it's obviously possible to steal them. So, in a million different ways. And they're like, well, this one theory I came up with doesn't make any sense. So how dare you say that? I'm like, well, I didn't say that theory. I literally just said, on its face, your elections don't demonstrate that the elections were won legitimately. So prove that you won them, right? Prove that you actually won them with legal votes. All the cast legally. You can't, so I don't have to take them seriously. And I think that's the breadth of the number of people. I mean, I'm not going to out anybody who likes my tweets, but the breadth of opinion who likes my tweets, it's the entire gamut of right-wing opinion, from populist to elite to business to it doesn't matter. So we're all basically in agreement. These elections are ridiculous, on its face, silly. Your insults don't matter. Sorry, leftists. Like, you can't just, like guilt trip us or try and socially shame us into saying these elections are good. No, they're fraudulent. And, I mean, obviously, like, everybody's talked about the Save America Act, but I'm going to be a big proponent of one very simple fix that if the Supreme Court doesn't solve this with the election day issue, my simple fix is this. The way that these elections matter federally the most is in the House, right? California is always going to win its Senate seats. Obviously, it's a Democratic state. But there's plenty of contested House races that will be close-ish. I think Mike Johnson and the House and the Republican House caucus should, in November, look at the results and say, if you are a California representative and you weren't ahead on election day, we're not going to seat you until we do a full investigation of your specific election and you prove you won. I think that's the simple way. That would, and you can announce that in advance. I think that would wake up California to realizing, because remember, this is a democracy in multiple ways. It may be a localized democracy in California, but it's also a federal democracy, which means we have the right, if the Republicans are the majority currently, we have the right to say to Democrats, we don't trust your elections. And so we're not going to trust the results of your elections. And, deal with it. Like, we're not going to seat your representatives until unless you fix this, because we're not putting up with it anymore.
You think Mike Johnson have the balls to do that?
I think he will. I mean, I think the Republican House was willing to pass the Save America Act. It's the Senate where we've had these issues and the filibuster and all that stuff. The beauty of this is in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 5 says each house is the judge of its own of its own members and their qualifications, right? So it's just the Senate has no say in how the House decides to seat people. We don't need to pass new law. It literally, I think the only restrictions on it are based on some other constitutional ideas that each member will have to be given individualized process. So you can't just blanket say you're not seating everybody. You have to provisionally not seat them and then send them to get an individualized hearing. But I see no reason why you couldn't do that. You basically could, it would be unprecedented. We haven't done this before. Basically, this power has only been used in individualized cases where there's been really, like criminal indictments for corruption, that sort of thing. But California's weakened its own election integrity so much that I think, and I think every Republican would think, that the presumption is flipped. Like, if you weren't ahead on election day and you get some late mail-ins to push you over the top, we're going to assume that's fraud, and you need to prove otherwise.
Where would you advise Bill Asaley to begin in an investigation here? We hear that these investigations have been ongoing. He was asking for fraud tips yesterday. We could go through all of the systems that they have created in LA in order to legalize fraud. which is what they've done, right? So they've made the fraud impossible to track based on the way that they count. And they've reverse engineered election security to do the opposite of election security. So it's going to be very hard. Where would you advise him to begin?
I think you start with, you want to start, it's possible you start with Kalshi and people who were like, maybe were involved in this sort of thing. You want to look for like the earliest big bets on Nithya Raman to come out of the primary. Like it looked, because on election day, it looked really bad for her. And then all of a sudden the money started moving in. And so you'd start there. You'd also start looking at the homeless encampments. And who are these people? How are they registered? Where are they registered? Where are their votes? Try and track them down. See if they're still in Los Angeles. See if they're, they'll admit they actually voted or if their vote was cast by somebody else. Because I think that's, I've seen enough about how, like, you don't actually have to provide, there's signature verification, but you don't actually have to sign. You can just leave a mark, and then somebody else can go see you and say that, or somebody else can sign and say, oh yes, I saw this person vote, but that person's signature can't be verified. Like, it's an endless pile of nonsense that obviously enables fraud. So you'd start there, right? Like, and the moment you can start proving a few homeless people didn't know, because like, if there's all these votes from homeless people, I'm sorry, like you're registering a whole bunch of homeless people, those people aren't voting in their right mind. Guaranteed. They're all addicts. None of them are showing up at the polls in their right mind. So that's just like the obvious source of where is this fraudulent, ballot stuffing happening. And I mean, if as you say, Nithya Raman is winning in these sort of homeless registered places, then it's just, hey, hi, a giant fraud. And I think the important thing is to realize, like, nobody should never take the bait on saying, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. I have like possible theories, I guess, but I'm completely agnostic about them. And we're just going to start with the presumption that here's the way, I guess this is the thing. Ted Lieu came at me yesterday and I said something to Ted Lieu, where I was like, Ted, you need to understand this. We don't trust you, and we have no reason to trust you, right? The California government is a criminal organization independently of the elections. Think about the high-speed rail boondoggle. So we don't trust. Why would we trust you to run an election properly if you're obviously stealing hundreds of billions of dollars on your high-speed rail? So if you want us to care and trust what you're doing, maybe you should run your elections in an obviously unimpeachable way that says, well, even if you are corrupt, clearly you have to be telling the truth. Like, for example, in Florida, Democrats might think Ron DeSantis and the Florida Republicans are totally corrupt, but they can have no question about whether our elections in Florida are on the level, because there's so many obvious ways in which you just can't cheat, and nobody has time to cheat because the election results come in 2 hours after closing. You can't cheat. It's not possible, even if you think we're a bunch of corrupt knaves. Well, California's gone the other direction. They know the rest of the country thinks they're a bunch of corrupt knaves, and yet they flout every election integrity measure that is widespread throughout the Western world. Like ID, mail-in ballots, ballot harvesting, allowing to count 7 days out, like these month-long returns. If this was if this was an election in a third world dictatorship, the State Department would be saying that we'd be treating the winner as like Maduro.
Right. We'd be doing a regime change.
Yeah, or we'd at least like open the possibility up. Like maybe if they were hostile to us, we'd do a regime change. If they weren't, maybe we'd give them a pass. But that's what we'd see it as. We'd see it as, okay, this is just clearly an illegitimate leader. We don't have to treat these results the way they're printed on. And then here's the thing: is the State Department ever called like conspiracy theorists for looking at low integrity elections and saying these election results are clearly unserious? Like, we don't have the State Department's not asked like, well, what's your theory for exactly how it was stolen? Like, that's not how the debate goes. It goes like, your elections have no integrity, so we don't have to treat the result as worth more than toilet paper. And so you're not a legitimate leader. The end.
This is exactly how California election results should be treated. I love that solution. Mm-hmm. I love that that amelioration of this, because at some point there's going to have to be a break, because they're going to do this nationally, Will, and that's the thing that concerns me, and why I want to spend maybe the whole week on California elections. We're going to head back out to California. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a zombie voter piece where I'm going to go track. I'm already working with people right now to go track down. I'm going to track down homeless people. Mm-hmm. I'm going to track down the people who've been voting in the last 50 elections, and they're 170. Yeah. I'm going to go do that. I
want to say one thing, because I forgot to do this, but I pulled this book off my bookshelf. The Means of Ascent by Robert Caro. This is a book, if you are at all interested in the topic of American elections and American elections.
LBJ, what a dirty dog. Just the dirtiest election thief
ever. It's a
ever.
whole series, right?
Every election he was in, he stole. Every single election he
stole
stole
the 1948 Senate election. That's how he got into the Senate.
Yep.
Right. He literally
stuffing boxes, stuffing all those boxes. Right? Is that?
Yeah. Basically.
Sorry to interrupt you, but please.
One of the most corrupt election. I mean, it is Robert Caro is like the ultimate establishment liberal, right? Like one of the most respected authors of all time. Liberals read his books, have read so The Means of Ascent by Robert Caro is just one of like I highly recommend it to anybody. It's a great read too. It's really entertaining. Caro's an incredible writer. I think he was won the Pulitzer for this stuff. But if you ever want, when people tell you, why would you ever suspect that an election was stolen? Like, you just need to read some American history to realize that this is not uncommon. And we got tired of it, and technology has gotten better and it's made it harder. But when you have California doing stuff like creating, these reservoirs of homeless votes, like that can be somehow that dropped off in a mailbox, like this, you're just like, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. It rhymes very much with how LBJ stole his election in 1948.
Any other solutions off the top of the head? I mean, you've been sparring all weekend over this with some big names. Any other solutions off the top of that? So the Mike Johnson solution, that would take some real guts. We would love that. We'll champion that with you. Voter ID. Obviously, we've had Carl DeMaio and the voter ID contingency in Los Angeles and in California. They've done incredible work. They had 2 million ballot signatures to get voter ID on the ballot for referendum in November. We'll see what happens with that. Any other solutions, Will, to this?
I mean, I think the Supreme Court is going to probably come in. I think this, and I'd be optimistic. Supreme Court's probably going to come in and say election day means election day, which means you can't accept ballots that arrive after election day. And I think that'll help a lot. That's a, in effect, that they're kind of saving the Democrats from themselves with that, I think, honestly, in terms of like having, making sure, ensuring that, forcing them to have reasonably high integrity elections.
I couldn't believe it, Will, when I saw this. That you don't even have to get the postmark stamped and dated, because they're like, if it's in the mailbox on election day, it'll count.
Right. And
apparently you can write it. You can write it on the envelope and just say, I voted on this day. They'll count it.
Right. Like, do they think we're stupid? They just think, and I think, Walter Kern had a great line about what this was. He called it cooling off the mark. Which is like, the idea is if you con somebody, after you've conned them and stolen their money, you want to, kind of reassure them, explain how, get them to believe it was a little bit their own fault, so they stop making a big deal out of it. Like that's the phase we're in now. We're getting told, it's like, well, obviously socialists just do well with late counted ballots, and obviously, like, why do you think Pratt could have won in a city as Democratic as LA? It's like, no, screw you. I mean, I think somebody pointed out that in Seattle, apparently the socialists also did well there with late mail at one point in a previous mayoral election. And that makes me think, I'm like, oh, so DSA is a criminal organization. Like, not surprising. These people are communists. When have communists ever broken the law to try and achieve a political objective? That's never happened in the history of humanity. Like, right. You think you're persuading me that you're making some compelling argument that no fraud happened here by pointing to a different election where DSA had benefited from late mail? Like, give me a break.
You're a really bright, you're like such a smart architect when it comes to fighting and winning and strategy. What would you advise Spencer Pratt to do right now, Will? Would you advise him to go to court?
I'd want to go to court. I wouldn't, I saw there was some noise about where I can find ballots. Don't say stuff like that. Like, I can find ballots, but just like, lawyer up, right? Go for it. And don't stop, right? Like, lawyer up, don't concede. Like, treat this election the way everybody else on the right is treating this election. It's phony. And don't buy into the idea. One of the things I don't think Trump did a great job of in that clip, and I love Trump, don't get me wrong, but like, he was talking about, oh, look, there's tons of evidence. I think the right way to frame this is, it is not my job to provide evidence when your rules make it possible to commit fraud and leave no trace.
Thank you.
Right?
I'm sorry, it took like 10 minutes to say that this morning, but that's a much better and concise way to say it.
Yeah.
Like, the way CNN, the way Christian Welker goes at this is the same game every single time.
Yeah. Where's the evidence?
Yeah.
I need no evidence. Your rules are a farce. You must provide evidence that despite this farce, you in fact won legitimately.
That's right. Thank you, Will. I need to bring you, thank you. This is called counsel. This is why people pay for lawyers, actually.
Yes.
It's called council. I hate that game. I hate that game that they play.
And
I'm going to go back out
it's
to
so frustrating. Everybody knows that that's the problem, right? Like that game is based on this false presumption, right? Like, there's no presumption of regularity.
If it were you making $50 million off of a daycare, you'd have CNN with their cameras so far up your ass. You'd have every single news network in the universe parked outside of your home, in camps, like on a tripod, pointing a camera at your door.
Right.
If you, a Republican and somebody who's close with the administration and who advocates for these things, was found to be committing tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud.
Right.
If you did a voter fraud, if you or one of the candidates you worked with or for or liked or one of your friends went from third place to first place in every single ballot drop after Election Day, Kristen Welker would be sleeping on your couch with a microphone, waiting to ask you the toughest questions on earth.
Russiagate, the entire theory was that Russia influenced the election in an outcome determinative manner in 2016, right? The Democrats are not above this sort of analysis.
That's right.
They pretend to be holier than thou.
That's exactly right. They never asked that question. Well, where's the evidence of Russiagate? They never asked that question.
Right.
Oh, well, show me the evidence that the Russians cheated the election. They never asked. They just went directly to the conclusion.
Right.
Man, it's sickening. It's so tough. Okay, just really quick. I want to leave people not with doom and gloom. So Mike Johnson, voter ID, Mike Johnson not seating, voter ID, Spencer Pratt potentially lawyering up. Any other solutions that you see for how we could fight this?
I think we just start, there's other ways you could basically punish California at the federal level, like beyond not seating their representatives. Like you just say, we're various things we're not funding. Like your state's a third world dictatorship. Yeah. Eventually, I think 180 years of statehood has been enough, honestly. Like, I think California should return to territory status, be stripped of its electoral votes. We can govern it like the Northern Mariana Islands.
Would there be any precedent for that?
I mean, yeah, Britain's governorship of Hong Kong. There you go.
So
voting doesn't work for you guys. Sorry. Like, we're just governing.
It's turn it into Guam, just turn it into...
Yeah, I mean,
right. Guam.
And maybe they can vote for their local elections, but maybe treat it or the federal district. Like, it's just Trump can come in and just change everything and, do what he wants. Whatever, basically we turn it into a federal protectorate instead of an independent sovereign state.
Yes, that might stick, actually. Turn every single representative into Stacey Plaskett, right?
Right. Yeah, they get 50 Stacey Plasketts who have no voting power.
We found the solution, ladies and gentlemen. Will Chamberlain, you got to follow him, man. He's the best. You got to follow him. Obviously, he works with our dear friend Mike Davis at the Article 3 Project. He's regularly on Piers Morgan's show, bodying libs and libtards and retard right and everyone. It's amazing. He's done a great job, and you must follow him. He's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers. You need to be one of them. He's got 500,000 there. Well done, Will. Godspeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Benny.
Hey, ALX, please check the War Room chat. Hate to do this on the live, but please check the War Room chat. I've been sending messages there. Need something up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just checking back in with our production here. Joel. Oh man. Oh no. Wow. I'm sorry. We've gotten behind today, and just because I'm hot-blooded on this issue, and I need to step back and let the experts speak. How about Joel Pollack, ladies and gentlemen, from the California Post, a man who is, I think, neighbors with Spencer Pratt, who lived and lives up in the Palisades, who knows L.A. better than almost anyone alive, and does the best coverage out of L.A. Joel Pollack joins the show live right now. Joel, I apologize. I was having too much fun with Will Chamberlain talking about how we need to make California a territory again and remove statehood from California. So I'm sure you're gonna take that personally, but over here in Florida, it's just these things seem rational at this point.
Well, we don't really have free and fair elections in California, so we don't maybe have the fundamental prerequisite for statehood. I don't know. It's an odd situation.
That's what we were saying. So, you're already seeing this with the Kristen Welker clip where libs are going to go, well, prove it. Democrats vote late by mail. Well, they didn't vote for Karen Bass, so only specific Democrats vote late by mail. And then we actually have the graph here. I'd love for you to break this down for me, if you wouldn't mind. We have the graph here of vote density and consolidation by Nikki Rahman throughout Los Angeles. And it's just unbelievable. She just skyrocketed. She built an entire empire of skyscrapers in Skid Row and in like Skid Row alone. And in some of the more dense areas and homeless infested areas throughout LA. What does this map say to you about how the election ran, please?
Well, yes, there are portions of that map. If you see, I believe hers would be the green skyscrapers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, some skyscrapers downtown, and also where it says Beverly Hills, those green skyscrapers are actually Westwood and around UCLA. So you're looking at students voting over there.
Oh, interesting.
And the other interesting thing about Nithya Raman's background, I'm relatively new to LA. I've been in LA for 15 years. Nithya Raman's been there for less time than I have. And the first job she had in LA was working for a homeless services organization. She also now chairs the homelessness committee in the LA City Council. She's done absolutely nothing to solve that problem, but she does know the infrastructure that exists within the neighborhoods that have the highest concentration of homeless people. So I think the evidence is starting to point us toward a vote harvesting operation that probably targeted Skid Row and other areas where there were many homeless people who could be registered to vote and could be encouraged either to sign their ballots in favor of Nithya Raman or to give them to people who would collect the ballots for them or whatever happened. But I believe we will probably find something like a turnout operation that concentrated on areas where she could get votes. And that's because she knew those areas better than Spencer Pratt, probably better than Karen Bass. Karen Bass has her own turnout operation that's run by the public sector unions. She did particularly well in Black and Hispanic parts of LA. That has always been her strongest foundation. Same places that voted for her in 2022. Spencer Pratt did well where Rick Caruso did well in 2022. He did well in Palisades, on the west side, parts of San Fernando Valley, which is a more suburban part of LA. So he also did well in the South Bay. These are middle-class areas, sometimes wealthier areas, but generally middle-class Angelenos who work for a living and understand what it takes to run a business, to get to work. And it's a three-way split, essentially. I mean, we're talking about small percentages that divide the candidates. I mean, the big picture story there is a very weak incumbent, Karen Bass, very weak after a poor performance on the LA fires last year, Palisades fire. She would point to some improvement in homelessness, but it's come at a massive cost. I mean, the amount of money the city has spent has been astronomical and not much vision. If you listen to her budget speech a few weeks ago, she really didn't say very much about where she sees the city going. No real plans for the World Cup, no real plans for the Olympics. It's all, in a way, tangential to what she sees as her job, which is just to hold a coalition together. Raman was part of that coalition and then broke away. And she broke away because of the success, in my view, of Zohran Mamdani winning in New York. I think Mamdani has energized a generation of far-left activists to believe they can repeat what he did in New York and other cities. And he's had some really terrible failures already in New York, but he's also had a run of good luck. I mean, tonight's game 3 of the NBA Finals, the Knicks might actually win a championship, and of course, he's going to take a victory lap for that. And a few other things have happened. He was able to dip into state funds to balance a city budget that had a massive deficit. But the left doesn't know that he went into the state funds. All they know is that he balanced the budget, and they're all celebrating like he's doing a great job. He makes these bizarre statements about foreign policy, and people are heading for the exits in New York because of his attack on wealthy people. And, he had this second home tax that he's now put into place with the help of the state legislature. In San Diego, by the way, among the other election results in California, voters rejected that. They rejected the sort of Mamdani tax in San Diego. But the left has decided that they can do what he did. And so she went after Bass. look, what we're probably seeing is what we saw in 2020, which is a legalized process of fraud. And it's something that goes back to 2010, really. We are living in an era where the parties don't believe in running the game in a fair way anymore. I think Republicans tend to believe it just because Republicans tend to be a little bit more adult. I compare the parties by calling the Republicans the adults and the Democrats the teenagers. You know, the adults have to pay the bills and make sure everything is done properly. And the teenagers get to rebel and complain, but ultimately they still depend on the adults. So that's kind of, it's kind of a model for how I think about it. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily a perfect analogy, but it is something that I think helps explain a lot of the behavior. And I think Republicans do take some of these institutions more seriously than Democrats. It's why Republicans won't get rid of the filibuster, whereas Democrats will probably do that the first day if they take the Senate back.
Yes.
But basically what happened in 2010 was Barack Obama came in and pushed Obamacare through on a party line vote. And that was the first time anyone had passed that kind of massive sweeping entitlement with only one party's support. And that inaugurated an era of zero-sum politics in the United States. Whereas before, people had cared about the rules of the game, people had cared about keeping conflict within bounds. Obama brought this Chicago-style mentality, which was, we don't actually accept the legitimacy of opposition, and you're not a real politician if you're not willing to do this kind of thing. And in a way, Trump is an answer to that. Trump is an answer to the Obama style of politics. So he's doing things within the limits of the law, but he's doing them right up to the limits of the law and the Constitution. He gets overturned a lot less than Obama and Biden because they often went outside the Constitution, but he is basically the response to that. And Democrats are not going to fix the voting system either in California or anywhere else unless there's some kind of massive federal intervention, because nobody is going to make a change right now, even if it's fair, even if it's principled. Nobody is going to undertake a change that could disadvantage their side and give the other side an advantage. People feel there's too much at stake. Nobody wants to give any quarter. And so what happened in California around the same time all this was happening, Arnold Schwarzenegger was on the way out as governor, and he had been a kind of surprise candidate when he ran in the recall several years before, got reelected, didn't do a fantastic job as governor, but at least temporarily disrupted the Democrats' single party dominance of California. And the Democrats decided that could never happen again. And so they started making changes to the California voting and electoral system that basically ensured Democrats would win in perpetuity. There has not been a single Republican who has won statewide since Arnold Schwarzenegger left office, and left with some of the changes like the jungle primary. And then in 2016, Jerry Brown signs the law that allows ballot harvesting. And before this election, Gavin Newsom barred federal officials from seizing voting machines. All of these things are designed to reduce transparency and increase the likelihood that there will be a Democrat elected to every office of significance. It doesn't mean Republicans can't win, but look at Proposition 50 last year. I mean, Gavin Newsom, in my view, broke the California Constitution to put this in front of voters before he had the authority to do so, redrew the congressional map. He says to counter Texas redrawing its congressional map, but Texas at least was complying with federal law and Supreme Court precedent on the revisions to districts that had been drawn along racial lines. California just made it up. And you know, Gavin Newsom still pretends he supports independent redistricting commissions. He doesn't. He did. This was a long-standing plan in place. They very quickly knew where to draw the boundaries. They clearly had done their demographic homework long in advance of Texas doing anything. And this was Gavin Newsom's play. And this is how Democrats run California. They run it as a one-party state. Now, as someone who has a home in California, you look at this and you could feel a sense of despair. The one comfort you take is that it doesn't work. Nothing they do works. Zero. Nothing they do works. Everything they do fails. Now, the illusion we were under in Pacific Palisades was that it's okay if they fail in LA, they fail in the rest of California, because we've managed to carve out a little life for ourselves here. We have a little slice of small town America. We've got the Little League going on weeknights and on Sundays, and we've got people going to church, and we've got people who help each other out in the 4th of July parade. It's like a little small town, 1950s era sort of little town in LA. And it was wonderful until the Palisades fire. And then Palisades fire happened. No fire engines, no police, no water. And we suddenly had LA hit us in the face. And the dysfunction of LA and the dysfunction of California made that life impossible and now basically a distant memory. So those of us who are still fighting in Palisades are fighting to change the way LA runs, change the way California runs. And Spencer Pratt stood up for us. And you don't have to like him. Some of my neighbors don't. Some of my neighbors don't like Karen Bass, but they're not huge fans of Spencer Pratt for whatever reason. That's fine. But I think everybody expected that he would be in the running against Karen Bass in the general election. There were polls that showed Rahman could be in second place. I actually did a video about one of them before the election, and there are reasons for that. But basically, the way this happened is so disconcerting. To watch a candidate clear of his closest rival by 7 points on election night, then get pulled back as the mail-in ballots come in. And Democrats who are pretending this is all above board are making the problem worse, because it just isn't. There's no other free society in the world that governs itself this way. And these people like Newsom and Jacob Soboroff and Kirsten Welker and all these people, like you said, demanding evidence. I mean, as Will pointed out, they didn't demand evidence in the Russia collusion case, but now they're demanding evidence here, and they're trying to divert the discussion to 2020 rather than talk about what's happening in 2026. And it's basically the same process. I mean, it's a process of legalized fraud. We don't know if there was actual fraud. We may find that there was. I think more likely you'll find these ballot harvesting operations going on. But this is not how a free society governs itself. It just isn't. And it can't be, because it destroys public confidence in elections. And the reason for all of these rules that allow late ballots and all this stuff, the reason they'll give you is, well, we want to make it as accessible as possible, as easy for people to vote as it possibly can be. But it's actually having the opposite effect, because a lot of people are just checking out. They're not going to vote because they just think the whole process is rigged. So you're actually reducing public participation, not helping it.
We talked with Will, and that was such an eloquent analysis and architecture of sort of the ground up, how we've gotten to the place where nobody believes in the systems anymore. The systems have been designed to fail. The integrities of the systems fail. The State Department, it's like, great. When you go through and you read a State Department cable about a rigged election, it doesn't say we found all the ballots that you stole the election with. It says your systems are broken, and therefore we do not trust the results of your election, which is exactly how the State Department and any logical American should approach, I believe, in California election. How do you ameliorate that?
Exactly
How do you?
right. If this was a foreign country, we would submit a report that said the election was not credible. And
We'd be invading, Joel. We'd be the State Department would be like, time for a regime change.
Yeah,
like,
someone said this morning, if this was Venezuela, we would have removed the leader already. It's something that we can't verify. These results can't be verified. And what I mean by that is, with ballot harvesting, we don't know who's turning the ballots in. It's basically an honor system, whether they filled the ballots out themselves or had the voters sign it in their presence. And you can dial up or dial down the sensitivity of the signature checks. We saw that, for example, several years ago in the 2020 election, the error rate in ballots that were read by the computers was reported as something like less than 1%. In other words, voters that filled out their ballots and submitted them by mail had an error rate of less than 1%. That's really low. But then a few years later, when people tried to recall the district attorney, who was a George Soros plant, the error rate was magically 27%. How do you go from 1% to 27%? Well, the answer is you have a different process, and you're much more rigorous in checking the signatures when you don't want something to count. And you're much less rigorous in checking the signatures when you do want something to count. So they kind of dial it up and dial it down. And with these ballot harvesting operations, there's no way to be sure that the vote is actually legitimate. You have to accept it on an honor system. And that's basically the argument for everything. I mean, Democrats say voter fraud doesn't happen because it's already illegal, and that's enough of a disincentive. But you can't check independently whether it's happening. So, yeah, I mean, I think there are many of us who are prepared to accept a flawed system. I think what is different is if the system is going to give us one result on election night and then give us a different result a week later, that's automatically going to make people think it's illegitimate, because it's indistinguishable from a system where people arrive and stuff the mailboxes full of ballots. It's just, how would you know that's happening? How would you know it's not happening? I mean, I feel at this stage, the burden of proof should not be on the people who feel there might have been fraud. The burden of proof is on the people who think there wasn't fraud, because you have to show me that these votes are legitimate after you have these kinds of wild swings. it has to be explained to people. And I don't think it's fraudulent. I think that we have a system that is terrible and they're taking advantage of it through legal means. But I think the ordinary person coming to this without any baggage looks at it and understands this is wrong. You know, when I was a kid, my first baseball game I ever went to, I grew up a Cubs fan, but the first time I ever went to a baseball stadium was Comiskey Park in Chicago. And I was sitting next to a couple of drunks and they had the all-star ballots, you know, for the all-star game. And these guys were just grabbing stacks of ballots and punching as many holes as they possibly could so that whichever, you know, second or third rate White Sox player they liked would make the all-star team. I mean, that's how this thing works when there are no checks on who's submitting ballots. You know, how do you know? I mean, a bunch of paper arrives and then you count it all. And that we have the equivalent of all-star balloting as the California system. It's basically it's a joke, and it's designed to be a joke. It's going to stay a joke unless there's massive federal intervention. And of course, that's only going to trigger more of this kind of internecine conflict, because right now where we are as a republic, I mean, it's unfortunate on our 250th anniversary, but we are moving away from the common things and the sense that the game has to work no matter who wins. And that's partly because of Barack Obama, frankly. I mean, the guy who ran on no red states, no blue states, he came into office and he divided people to win. He divided people to push his left-wing agenda. And that became the default in the Democratic Party. That's why you're seeing it move further and further left, and why moderate Democrats are basically disappearing. One guy you haven't heard of is this guy, Matt Mahan, who is the mayor of San Jose, probably the most accomplished Democrat in the race for governor. And he had all the Silicon Valley money behind him, and it didn't help in the end because Democrats have no appetite for a moderate candidate, even one who has actually achieved something with regard to housing and homelessness. The Democrats all competed with each other in this gubernatorial race about who could be more anti-Trump. And that's where the Democrats are. Republicans, I think, want the country to work because Republicans tend to have more invested in institutions, in homes. You know, I said before it was like adults versus teenagers. We've almost become a society of owners versus renters. And again, it's a generalization because there are plenty of Republicans who are renters too. But, you know, if you think you still believe in owning, investing, you care about the long term, you're thinking about political choices differently. If you're a renter, you don't have any hope of owning, you think about redistribution because you want your needs to be met. You think the people who have something have taken it from you. And that's how you're encouraged to think by your college or your political leaders and your culture, you know, Jimmy Kimmel or whoever you're listening, TikTok, I don't know. But it's definitely a kind of a renter paradigm versus an owner paradigm. And right now, the renters have all the momentum, partly because they're out of power politically on a national level, but partly because they have organizing tools that the owners haven't really learned how to use yet. And in this case, well, again, what we might find is Raman had organizers who went to these homeless areas like you did when you were in LA, and you found dozens of people registered at parking lots. I mean, how difficult would it have been to submit those ballots? Probably pretty easy. So I think that's probably what we'll find.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can end on this, Joel. How perhaps you could break down like how easy this operation would be to rig, like how the legalized rigging of elections work on a step-by-step basis, and then how do you stop it? Is voter ID going to pass in California, for instance, on the November referendum?
Well, the way it works is typically the person who registers you to vote will also turn in your ballot. That's how ballot harvesting works. So, I talked to a Republican leader when they started experimenting with ballot harvesting among Republican voters in California. They got nowhere because Republicans don't want to give up their ballots. Republicans consider their ballot to be a secret. They take voting very seriously. It's a private thing between you and God, basically. And Democrats might think that the secret ballot is important, but what usually happens is they vote in groups and they vote as part of a team exercise. It's almost like a social activity, which is why the genius of Obama's 2012 reelection was to say to people, make a plan to vote. Not just vote for Obama, but make a plan to vote. And they did it in groups. And so what's happening in California is that the people registering you to vote come back 6 months later and say, hey, I'm here to pick up your ballot. So you've already seen this person, you trust them, you hand them your ballot, and they've already let it be known that they're Democrats, and there's a little bit of pressure, right? You're going to vote for the Democrat, right? I mean, they're not supposed to do that, but you know who they are, you know where they're from. They know where you live. They're at your door. And so there's more of an organizational aspect to it. And so what's happening, I think, is that in nursing homes and in these homeless encampments and so forth, the people registering people to vote are also the ones who pick up the ballots or collect the mail and may even deliver the ballots and say, hey, you know, I've got a pile of ballots here. It's voting day. Everybody who wants to vote, come vote here. And, you know, I was, I won't say where I was at because I don't want this person to get fired, but let's just say I was shopping for something pretty cool. Not that I could afford it just yet, but a kind of a fun vehicle, let's put it that way. And I rode around with this person who was an incredible sales lady, just amazing, super nice person. She told me, confided in me that she had voted for Karen Bass and she was embarrassed about it. And Bass had done a terrible job. And then she says to me, if you vote for Spencer Pratt, I'm not selling you this product. And that's the kind of peer pressure that exists in LA. And she thought that was funny. You know, I think she said it half jokingly, but you know, that's the atmosphere. So are you really going to tell the person who registered you to vote that you're going to vote for a Republican? If that person is a Democrat, it's really hard. So I think Democrats basically control the voting process. It's a throwback to the late 19th century before the secret ballot was invented. That's how people voted. You'd go into like some kind of a room and you would say out loud who you were voting for, and the party would be there and they would watch who you voted for. And eventually it was so susceptible to fraud that dozens of states adopted the secret ballot. I think it was Harrison, the second President Harrison, who was elected, and there was massive fraud by Republicans in Indiana, and so that was such a scandal that they instituted the secret ballot, and you know that's the way it was for a century. But Democrats basically have reintroduced the partisan ballot. They control the process, and this ballot harvesting thing that California does is the kind of epitome of that.
That's fascinating. That's exactly right, because you get rid of the secret ballot when all the ballots are shoved in a mailbox. Right. When you get like 50 mail-in ballots for every person that ever lived at your domicile. There's nothing secret about it. It's like embarrassing. I mean,
there's another problem, which is that who delivers the ballots, right? It's the postal union. Well, the postal union endorses candidates. So are you really going to be comfortable if you're a Republican voting by mail, handing it to a mail carrier who you know, I mean, look, of course not. Yeah. They're supposed to deliver it, but I'll tell you this. I was displaced by the Palisades fire, okay? But I have a forwarding address. I never got my ballot. My wife never got her ballot. I voted in person. I voted in person in California, but I never got my mail-in ballot. Now, what's that about? You know, like, I mean, it's so, you know, the people who are supposed to deliver the mail, they have their own favorites, and that's a problem.
What a mess. What a mess, Joel. You run the California Post, you do unbelievable work there. Everybody needs to subscribe to the California Post and read it with a regular basis. They're connected with the New York Post, and Joel's been doing such incredible work with Andrew Breitbart, has this storied legacy of exposing the truth about these systems. Please follow Joel. Obviously, he has so much to say about this issue and topic, but also he has a really clairvoyant way to see through these issues and to tell you what's really going on, because it's more simple than it's all fraud. It's an entire system. It's a system that's built and designed for fraud and designed so that you can never challenge it. And that's the purpose. They reverse engineered it. Joel has hundreds of thousands of subscribers on X here. You should be one of them. Godspeed, Joel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Man, Joel talking about losing his home, talking about losing everything in the Palisades fire, as so many people did. And when you have families and children, it's the number one thing that you think about on a regular basis is loss. Something that you have to think about when it comes to a year like we've had, when we've seen so many tragic losses, assassinations, assassination attempts. It's happening all across the country. Ethos, ladies and gentlemen, is a life insurance company that we really like on this program. Life insurance might seem like a crazy thing to think about when you're relatively young, but that's actually exactly when you have to think about it, when you have the most to lose. You have little children running around and wife, family, and God forbid something were to happen to you. And again, if there's one thing this year has proven is how fragile life is, and God is the author of life and death. You think about your parents, your spouse, your close family, your children. If you're becoming a new parent, life insurance is something you've got to think about, considering the world that we live in. Accidents do happen. circumstances change. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast, easy. It's 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get the same day coverage. No medical exam. You just answer a few questions, and you can get up to a $3 million coverage plan. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. That's like a Chick-fil-A order. Crazy. I took my kids to Chick-fil-A. We don't often go to fast food ever, but my wife was leaving for a conference, and so I took the kids out to Chick-fil-A so she could get out without them all crying. The $30 just to get the kids fed. It's like crazy what's happened, man. Anyway, the point is that you'll get the lowest rate from network carriers, and Ethos has 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot with over 4,000 reviews. Take 10 minutes and get covered today with life insurance through Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/Benny. That's ethos.com/Benny. Apply today. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go ahead and check in with the producers here. Roxanne is ready to go. Roxanne Hogue is the chairwoman of the Republican Party in Los Angeles. Joins us live now. Roxanne, thank you so much for being here. I know that you're traveling right now, and so we really appreciate your time. Everybody's concerned about what's going on in Los Angeles. Can you give us an update? Is the Republican Party going to plan on fighting any of this, and how will they fight?
Well, I've been listening to all your guests this morning when I could. And I think what people don't understand, Joel, of course, nails a lot of it because he's from there, but is just how baked in the cake everything is. So the cake was baked in 2012, 2013. They instituted driver's licenses for illegals. Then they instituted motor voter. Before that, they instituted Top 2, which sadly was a Republican idea. And so this morass of what the rest of the country is seeing and calling fraud, which is completely legal and codified in California, is the basis for the landscape. We still don't know the denominator for this election, because ballots can be arriving up until Tuesday, the end of the day Tuesday. So, by the way, when you showed that precinct level map, it's not of the current situation. It's of what happened the night that they closed the election in person. So that precinct level map, that is just from a portion of the votes. 80% of the votes in California, definitely in Los Angeles, are mail-in ballots. So there's so much stuff going around. And, you know, the LA County Republican Party, we're the largest Republican county party in the country with over 1 million, almost 100,000 registered Republicans. But we are just 20-something% of LA County and only 14.7% of the voters in the city of LA. I'm a volunteer. Everyone who's with the party is volunteered. I'm literally not allowed to be paid. So that's a very long way of answering when you say, what are the Republicans going to do about this? Yeah. I'm going to tell you what your next rant is going to be about. It's going to be about LA specifically in California exporting millions of dollars to elect every one of those expletive deleteds in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. They all, a lot of them, get elected with California money, and then they use California as a punching bag. So we're a punching bag and an ATM, and now that we finally had a great candidate in Spencer Pratt articulating what should be talk about commonalities, you know, getting rid of corruption, crime, and grime, which is what Carl DeMaio always says. Now, all of a sudden, they're like, yeah, what are you guys doing about it? Well, give back some of the money. Send help, national Republicans. Speak up. Do something for us.
Yeah, I mean, we've done as little as it is. We've tried to go out and expose how this operation worked. And 6 months ago, we were right that the homeless industrial complex is used in order to rig these elections, but it's funded by the Trump administration. The Housing and Urban Development strokes a check to California in order to fund the homeless complex. So what's your message? What's your message
to NGOs
to
like Sherla?
That's right.
You know, I said a few days, I love the president. I really love the president. But it is very clear that, and I wasn't talking about people like you, I'm talking about literal congressmen and senators who LA donors, if they give them $100,000, they get elected because you can buy TV in Nebraska with 100 grand, whereas in LA, you can't even send mail in one district, right? So my message is invest in California, invest behind the blue curtain. It is Soviet level stuff that's going on here. I'm an immigrant from Jamaica, and it's an insult to third world countries like mine, like my homeland, to say that LA is third world. We wish we were third world, because in Jamaica, we can count our ballots overnight.
What would be the scenario in which Spencer Pratt could be back in the race? Is there any, or is this cake been baked, as you said? Was there ever a chance for Spencer Pratt?
There was always a chance, because what I saw, which made me sad, but it made me happy, most of his supporters were Democrats. They were not Republicans. Republicans weren't going to ever, we would give a boost, but the only way you win an election in LA is with the majority of the people who vote. And the majority of the people who vote, by the way, voter turnout for this election is still hovering around 32%. Again, we don't have the denominator until the end of the day, probably went closer to Wednesday, but it was always going to take disaffected Democrats and NPPs. The problem is, in a primary, NPPs don't vote. He was so good. He is so good. He started a conversation that needed to be had. And what is striking, and that the rest of the country doesn't understand, is the level of delusion, much like the German. I mean, I'm sure you remember this from when the Germans had their migrant crisis, and one of the volunteers was sexually assaulted by a migrant and said, "Oh, but I couldn't report it because poor migrants." That's what we've got. We've got Stockholm syndrome. We've got an electorate that's basically like abused wives, that sees poor broken souls. By the way, Spencer called them zombies, but those are all somebody's son or somebody's daughter or somebody's dad. They're dying on the streets. Democrats are, let me adjust. We have a battle in LA between Democrats and DSA. So Karen Bass is a doctrinaire, Cuban revolutionary trained leftist. Nithya Raman is next level. So when people say, "Oh my God, nobody loved this woman in her own district, she didn't win, how could she?" Because DSA is a force. Democrats come to me and ask me, and by the way, donate to the Republican Party in order to fight that. But we need more and bigger help to do that.
That's very interesting. Okay, so how does Nikki Raman lose her own district yet win in greater Los Angeles? How's that possible?
Well, it's possible because when you see the results of what Nithya has done to her home district, and all my friends who live in very nice houses south of the boulevard in Sherman Oaks, they're the ones getting broken into. They're the ones that are whose businesses can't be entered because there is a body or someone defecating in front of their actual place of work. So the people in her own district know that. Everyone else just goes, "Oh my God, look, this is so great. This is somebody, she's a progressive." And I think it's sort of analogous to the 2016 election. Remember, the battle was between, for the hearts and minds of the unheard people, was between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. So she's like the Bernie Sanders in this race. Like, "Oh, look, I'm cool. I want something new. I can't vote for Bass's in the toilet as an incumbent." Incumbents generally skate to reelection here with the 50% plus one. So anyone who was uncomfortable, but they didn't want to be icky, they literally, their entire talking point was, "We've already had and tried things with one white male reality TV star."
I got to tell you that I'm seeing some people dooming on LA. Maybe I'll leave you with this final question. A lot of people are saying, like, let's just let it burn, right? So maybe the system was rigged, but nothing's ever going to happen because it's institutionalized, legalized fraud. LA just needs to suffer, and it just needs to be something like a lesson hard learned. What's your response to that?
I would say the rest of the country lets LA burn at their peril. We are like the petri dish for every bad idea that gets exported to the rest of the country. And by the way, tell me to move all you want, but I already fled these people, and they come after you at the point of a gun and the tip of a spear. I saw as a child family friends get raped and murdered because of what drives leftists, which is envy. And they are coming for you, and they're coming to your red state. Already, your textbooks in your safe red state, wherever you are, they're printed to comply with California standards. Our little election ideas about letting non-citizens vote and having all mail in because it's so convenient and all those things, they're coming for you. So make fun of us all you want, but send help and get on your knees and thank God there are those of us who are willing to stay and fight, like Joel, like me, like Jen Van Laar, like my husband, Bob Hogue, like all the people, Corinne Rankin, who's our chairman. There are tons of us here behind the blue curtain, and you better believe you need us.
Wow, what a powerful answer. And I couldn't agree with you more, because if you want to strike at the heart of darkness, like it'd be so great to defeat leftism where they are trying to incubate these ideas and expand them. If you can't defeat them there, then you're going to have to defeat them on your territory. You want to fight an offensive war, not a defensive war, always. And this is such a great strategic point. Follow-up question on strategy. Should Spencer Pratt sue? Is there any legal remedy? Did you just have to lick your wounds and accept that the machine is too strong, too big, too rigged? What should happen here?
I'm clearly delusional because I came to LA to be an actor, and then I took on the chairmanship of the Republican Party of Los Angeles County. So I'm always like, yeah, we can do it. But there is, first of all, I'm not a lawyer, but I have played one on TV. You have to have standing to sue. And there has to be something that has been against the law, which is what the perniciousness of them changing all the laws. But trust me, we have eyes on everything right now. A recount can only happen if you're within a narrow band of a vote count. Spencer's looking at that. We're curing ballots. Again, this wasn't a Republican only issue. This was a common sense issue. And so there are a lot of Democrats looking around today who go, wait a second, I voted for this guy because what he said made sense. I would say to every Democrat in blue territory, it's time to drop the D. It's time to change your registration. If you're in California, you can be an NPP. And if you're an NPP, it's time to, Naomi Wolf had a great article, I don't know if I can say this, that said, I'm not brave, you're just a P word. Be brave, be a little bit brave, because bravery is contagious. And yes, I've lost jobs. Yes, I've lost friends. But what good is it if you lose your entire country and you lose your soul? So stand up, do something. We're behind Spencer, whatever he chooses to do. He's an amazing, he diagnosed the problem. He suggested solutions to the problems, and he articulated them well. And I hope he sticks around and is part of the conversation for a long time to come. And it ain't over until the fat lady, it ain't over until the large female identifying person sings. I think we can say sings.
I would love to see LA get broken up, man. There's no reason that Palisades or Brentwood or any of those neighborhoods need to be in actual Los Angeles. Like all those Spencer Pratt areas, that needs to become its own. That needs to become its own jurisdiction.
We
that's
tried
what I
that.
think should happen.
By the way, the San Fernando Valley tried to secede, and guess what they did? They changed the rules to secede so that if your area wants to leave the city of LA proper, you have to get all the other areas to agree. So that's the challenge. They keep changing the rules. It's Calvin Ball. It's Calvin Ball.
I love that reference. I love that reference. Roxanne, please come back. Everybody should follow Roxanne Hogue. She is the chairwoman inside of a battle of darkness versus light. It's really less red versus blue, Republican versus Democrat. It's really good versus evil when it comes down to it in LA. And so please give her a follow here and support those who are fighting for you. Thank you, Roxanne. Please come back.
Thank you.
We will be out in Los Angeles. We will be going to the Patriot Mobile 500. That's going to be racing in California. And we're going to go out and hit the bricks this month. We have a very busy week this week. We're going to Texas, then we're going to DC. But we're going to go out this month and we're going to hit the bricks in California. We're going to keep telling this story. Patriot Mobile will be our friends and allies when we do that. Patriot Mobile, ladies and gentlemen, fighting back against leftist censorship, taking back ground culturally inch by inch. This is why they're sponsoring NASCAR races and so on. It's an awesome company. They've just been a long time friend of us. And I just don't know how we could do some of the work that we do. Like, for instance, going to Skid Row. traveling without Patriot Mobile. Their hotspots, their wireless hotspots are incredible. The service is incredible. You know that we need to stay connected. Patriot Mobile gives you premium priority nationwide service on all 3 major networks, and you can get international roaming, unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, which work great, and 100% US-backed customer support. It's easy. Keep your number. Make the switch in minutes. Go to patriotmobile.com/Benny. Call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Benny for a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/Benny. Call 972-PATRIOT and make the switch today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the great Laura Logan. Man, I'm excited about this. Laura Logan is on and is locked and loaded. Somebody that I asked for before we went live with the show today, and I'm so thrilled that she was able to join us. She's been calling out this election fraud from the bleachers. And, well, I'd like to talk some solutions with Laura Logan live now. Laura, thank you so much for being on and for your patience this morning. We had an absolutely stacked show because it's a stacked topic. How can you have
it was fascinating listening to your guests. Don't apologize.
How can you have a country that runs an operation like this? You obviously were an international reporter. You've been to, I don't know, 50, 100 different countries around the world. I'm not sure. You've traveled the world. Have you ever seen anything as corrupt and broken as California elections?
No, and in fact, you know what's interesting about California, especially the city of Los Angeles, is that the company, that voting machine company that still runs Los Angeles is Smartmatic. And if you, I know you've been following this subject for a long time, you know that the digital voting in America began with Smartmatic. And Smartmatic was a Venezuelan company that was started because Nicolas Maduro, who was then president of Venezuela, he was elected, of course, you know, as a Marxist, promising to redistribute wealth and to do good for the country. By the time he was facing a referendum in 2004, most of the country, more than 80%, were living below the poverty line, and he was absolutely certain to lose that election. So his friends in Cuban military intelligence said to him, "Don't worry, we have a solution for you. We got these lottery machines that we learned how to rig, and we've learned how to rig voting machines, and we can make sure that you do not lose this referendum." Why is this relevant? Because that is what has led to where we are today with an entire system that, yes, I heard your guest talking about the mail-in ballots. No question about it. The mail-in ballots are absolutely part of the fraud. But the digital technology is what enables you to know how much fraud you're going to need and how to compensate for that. That's what all the data is about. That's what all these automatic voter registration. I heard your previous guest talk about motor voter, right? I don't know if people know what that is. That basically means there are states where the moment you get your driver's license, you are now registered to vote. Why is that important? Because you're not legally able to vote until you're 21. So that gives them 3 years. 3 years when you are on that voter roll for them to be able to vote in your name before you ever show up at a polling station to use your right to vote. And they do this all over the country. So whether it's mail-in ballots in California, which are just staggering, absolutely staggering, because the idea that you can put a handwritten note with a date on that ballot and that is supposed to be legal. Someone posted a copy of a ballot where someone had actually signed it with a smiley face. Now, I don't know if they accepted that ballot or not, but you might as well. If you have no signature verification, then this is a joke. This is not an election. This is a joke. And I tell you what, at least in third world countries, you know, when Hosni Mubarak would win the election with 90% of the vote, everybody knew he cheated, right? Nobody was pretending that it was a real democracy. These people actually pretend that it's a real democracy. And I think one of the most powerful things I read this morning was a guy who said that they made a big mistake in California because they managed to unite. They managed to do something that no one else has been able to do, except for COVID, which was to unite Democrats, Republicans, and people in the center. Because we all watched in real time as this election was stolen. And for the people saying that there's no evidence, that is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. That is so disrespectful to the American people because we have spent years putting out a plethora of evidence. We're drowning in evidence. And the fact that somebody can go on television and actually try to say to the president, there's no evidence, who do these people think they are?
Yes, please. Given the fact that you have a rich background in corporate media and broadcast, and international reporting. What would you say to Kristen Welker? What would you say to CNN that is constantly going on and saying, well, there's no evidence, there's no evidence. You don't provide the evidence. We went with the Russia collusion hoax, of course, for years. You know, the way that they reverse it is remarkable. They do the same thing with Nick Shirley. What's your evidence that there's fraud being committed by the Somalis? They play this game. Isn't it their job to go investigate? The evidence, like you're the problem. You need to go get the evidence. You're the journalist. Please, your response to Kristen Welker.
So I really have to take a breath, right? I have to take a breath, and because it makes me so upset. I've been a journalist for more than 35 years. More than 35 years, okay? And when I see somebody doing what she's doing, it is so disrespectful to disregard the American people like this. I know what a story is normally in the media world, right? So when you have a woman like Victoria White, who was an unarmed protester on January 6th, who was pushed into the West Tunnel. This woman was beaten over and over and over again. I mean, she had blood running down her face. She's unarmed. She's like a rag doll, been thrown about in the crowd. And when I did a story on this, because I bothered, Benny, to do my job, as you rightly put it, and I bothered to investigate and look at all these cameras, I found that while she was being savagely beaten by Jason Bagshaw, who's now been promoted, by the way, who's still in the Capitol Police, by Officer Bagshaw, she's being beaten by at least 2 or 3 other Capitol Police officers at the same time. And these batons that they carry, these asps, these can kill people. Okay, this is so painful. So this poor, tiny, slight woman who was doing absolutely nothing got savagely beaten. I don't know how Victoria White did not die. I mean, if ever there was a justification for the weaponization fund living in one single human being, it is Victoria White. And she is not the only one. So when I see someone like Kristen Welker say to the president, you know, there's no evidence of weaponization of the government, are you out of your tiny little mind? You know, at this point, you have become, I mean, not just part of the problem, you're much more than part of the problem. Because what you're talking about, Benny, when people went with Russia collusion with no evidence, that's not the same thing as what we're talking about here. Because now all this evidence is out there. They don't even have to do their jobs. They can actually just look at the work that other people have done. And they still deny it. They still put people on television today, people like John Brennan, to imply and suggest and mislead the American public and pretend that Donald Trump has this special relationship with Russia. And, you know, remember, John Brennan's the one who said that Putin was his handler, right? And Donald Trump was a Russian spy. They still put these people on television. They still treat them with credibility. They still do all of this. And I have, you know, I mean, I interviewed many presidents in my lifetime, and I have never seen anyone be as rude to a president as these journalists are to President Trump. Now, on the other side of that, they would probably say, well, no one ever called us stupid and fake news. You know, it's the only thing that keeps you sane when you watch the treatment of President Trump is to see him fighting back. Because going back to that first term, where I think people have forgotten, I still have PTSD from it. I don't have PTSD from being gang raped in Egypt when I was on assignment for 60 Minutes. I don't have PTSD from my many, many, many years on the battlefield, not as a soldier, by the way, not as a soldier, as someone who just told their stories. Okay, and that's a really important point that I want to make today. You've got journalists out there, you know, I have friends who were wounded. I have friends who died on the battlefield, but that is not the same thing as a soldier who carries the weight of combat and the risk of death with every single step that they take and all the sacrifice that they do, the degree to which they put themselves in harm's way is nothing compared to journalists who just parachute in and out. Most of them, not all, there's a small few that spend time on the battlefield, but there really are not a lot. Most of the time, they come in and out, they're there for 4.5 seconds, and they want to compare themselves to the people who live that every single day. I mean, I just think we've lost our way here as journalists. Journalists have forgotten to be journalists. We're not lawyers in a court of law trying to prove a case. We are not activists. We don't go out there and campaign. That is not our job. Our job is to figure out the truth and not little bits of the truth so that we create a false, well, I can defend each thing individually, but now I've created a false and misleading picture. That is so profoundly dishonest. And in the beginning of this, you could have said, okay, well, there's important people like the director of the CIA is saying that Trump's a Russian spy. Maybe he is. There's no excuse for this kind of thing at this point. If you look at Georgia, if you look at Maricopa County, if you look at Michigan, I mean, we can go on and on and on. And by the way, it's disrespectful to all of the American people who have spent years now in investigating and exposing election fraud. It's disrespectful to them to say that there's no evidence because you're too lazy or too corrupt or too stupid or too ideologically blinded or all of the above. I don't really care. But when you ignore people like Victoria White, and when you allow elections to be stolen, you may think, you know, your earlier guest said people don't want to admit this because they get caught up in the my side's going to win, my side's going to lose thing. We all lose when elections are stolen. You know that, and I know that. No one wins if you allow the entire system to be corrupted.
I want to pivot to your time covering some of the chaos and some of the upheaval internationally, because I believe there's a really good argument to be made here that we shouldn't be trusting or absolving California for their broken systems in the process. It's not up for me to prove fraud. Your systems are so broken, I can't trust your results. And you are the one who should be able to prove that your election was clean and secure, and you haven't been able to do it. In fact, the Supreme Court is now going to have to be forced to come in and rein in these states. Hopefully, let's pray that they do. But how would the State Department, you've covered the State Department, how would the State Department be treating a nation state that does the type of things that California is doing with their ballots right now?
You know, Benny, there isn't a simple answer to that question because unfortunately our State Department has been involved in election fraud in other countries.
Of course.
Right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
think about when Ashraf Ghani won the election in Afghanistan. He was polling at less than 2% of the vote. Okay, that's the Obama administration for you. Unfortunately, what has happened is that while there has always been election fraud, right? I mean, I live in the state of Texas. It is a standard thing here. Everybody says it. Dead Mexicans got Lyndon Johnson elected, right? So this is it's not the first time. It's not the last time. Of course, people are going to cheat. The difference is that we now have the technology that allows people to cheat all across the world, all across the country, all in one moment, just like that. The problem that they have is the cover up. Okay. Now, in third world countries, that's not a problem because there are no institutions that are doing oversight of the election. There is no First Amendment. So there are no, supposed journalists, right, who are working to expose this. And the voice of the people just doesn't matter because even if they go out on social media, if they're brave enough to go out on social media or, in a country like Iran, you can be killed for that, right? You can be executed. Well, even if they're brave enough to do it, they don't have the rights that American citizens have. So, comparing these things is not really fair because the United States of America is meant to be the gold standard of elections for the whole world. It's not okay to say, okay, well, there was a problem here, or maybe there was a problem there. That's not okay because everyone everywhere is watching this country right now. This LA race is not just a mayor's race in one city. And let's be clear here. Los Angeles and New York, just population wise, can elect the president of the United States with a popular vote. Right? So these are very significant cities. The size of these cities is so important. That's what makes LA such a significant test case. And what I was saying to you about Smartmatic, that's why it's so significant that the only city in America where Smartmatic is still able to operate and run the election is in Los Angeles, because the cover up is what allows them to get away with this. This is why the Republicans who don't do anything about this are so disgusting to the people, right? This is why they're seen as traitors and cowards. This is why John Thune not passing the SAVE Act, not bringing it to a vote. This is why J.D. Vance not going into the Senate and exercising his rights, right, to make the SAVE Act pass. That's why these are such big issues, because everybody recognizes that without fair elections, you have nothing. We know what the Democrats have planned. They're not hiding it. Susan Rice came out and said the gloves are going to be off. We're not playing by the rules anymore because they don't play by the rules. Come on. They have stated that they're going to impeach Trump. They're going to go after people like Pete Hegseth. They're going to go after everyone they hate and the family. They're going to go after the family. And you know what? They're going to use Republican traitors and rhinos and cowards to help them do it. Just like they did with January 6th, where they got Republicans to stand up. Isn't Tillis? Tillis is one of the senators who is still saying, acting like the January 6th defendants were some violent insurrectionists. How dare these people? But the one thing, Benny, that I would say, none of this will stop without accountability. That's the bottom line. If you leave the leaders of Antifa's terrorist networks free to operate, they will continue to operate. If you leave them free to continue to fund these riots, it will lead to violence. Someone else will get killed. ICE agents will be targeted. They will be hunted down and persecuted by a Democratic administration. If you allow people to get away with treason and sedition, you have no country. Because these people that were engaged in the Russia conspiracy, the treasonous conspiracy, they're still engaged in the same conspiracy. You ask any attorney worth their salt, and they will tell you that for a conspiracy to end, the conspirators have to acknowledge the conspiracy and they have to end it. None of those things have happened. All these morons out there talking about, statute of limitations. No, every time the media participates in this conspiracy as a co-conspirator by pushing more false narratives that deceive the American people, they are restarting the clock on the statute of limitations. They restart it every single day when they keep pushing these lies that there is so much evidence to disprove. I don't even know where to start. I spent 2.5 years investigating election fraud after the 2020 election. I didn't think an entire election could be stolen. I had no idea what I was dealing with. And there are a plethora of people out there who have risked absolutely everything. I mean, Georgia is a case in point. Fulton County is a case in point. And so what I would say to you, if you're looking to the State Department and you're looking, to these institutions, the State Department functions as an arm of the CIA. And we all know, look at Ukraine, right? The the color revolution in Ukraine, when the State Department and the intelligence agencies participated in the overthrow of a government there. I mean, dirty elections are what the intelligence agencies do best. But with machines and with corrupt officials, now what we have is that election officials have made this, they've drawn party lines, and now they're like, we're going to defend the fraud. We are going to make sure that we defend this to the death. And if there's no accountability, they're going to keep doing it right in front of your face.
Wow. So you're saying that you see a through line between the way that the CIA and intel agencies rig elections in third world countries and California.
Yep, without a doubt. And I'll tell you something that is quite troubling. And with all due respect, I say this. The Trump administration went after Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela because they rightly knew they had worked for 12 years on an indictment on Nicolas Maduro, right? Venezuela was directly involved in the theft of the 2020 election. They stole that election from President Trump, working with Iran, working with the CCP, working with others. We know a lot of the details because there is a Venezuelan, very senior Venezuelan, sitting in prison who was actually a witness, an eyewitness to the theft. But what President Trump's administration did not do is they did not go after all the other people in Maduro's administration who were involved in the theft of the 2020 election. You know what they did instead? They took the woman, Delcy Rodriguez, the vice president under Maduro, and they made her the president. And that is because, from what I understand from people dealing with this firsthand, that's because, among others, the intelligence agencies were convincing the president, oh, you can't risk, having the regime collapse in Venezuela. That's going to hurt you, and so on. Delcy Rodriguez and her brother Jorge Rodriguez, who presided over the theft of the 2020 election, are 100% complicit in the theft of elections in 72 countries worldwide. You want to know why President Trump doesn't get the support that he needs from a country like Spain? Because the cartel in Venezuela, the cartel that runs the country, Cartel de los Soles, they selected the Spanish prime minister. Why does America get all this heat from all over the world? Because the globalist, Marxist, Islamist alliance has these cartels as their army, they all work together. So we don't face one enemy. The election in LA, the corruption there, the corruption in the system, this isn't about one enemy. This is about all of America's enemies working together. And all of those illegal immigrants in that sanctuary state of California who not only distort California's representation in the House, but who also they're on juries, so they're involved in the criminal justice system. I mean, all of these people, what they're doing is they are diminishing citizenship. They want to take your individual sovereignty and your national sovereignty, and they want to make it mean nothing. And that's what they're in the presence of doing, in the process of doing. And what did they do at the same time? They imported the most violent people from Venezuela's prisons. Do you see, Benny, how these things line up? Smartmatic in Venezuela being involved in the theft of the election is only one part of it. Flooding the country, Tren de Aragua is the cartel everyone knows about. They're like the ultra-violent army, sort of the dumb guys that do all the violence for the Venezuelans. Literally, they were created by going into Venezuela's prisons and recruiting the most violent people and creating this organization that is a paramilitary force. It is a violent, armed, trained paramilitary force that was infiltrated into out towns and cities. And these are the people that are in front of the ICE detention centers and helping to fuel the protests. So you have them, they fight on every single front. Elections is one front. It's only one. And the idea that you can have a Marxist, when Marxism has forced out 8 million Venezuelans, has failed people worldwide, has been responsible for the death of how many people worldwide, and we are still glorifying it and glamorizing it. And where does much of that propaganda come from? It comes from the city of Hollywood, comes from the city of LA, coming out of Hollywood. So these things are tied together, and you can't fight on one front. You have to fight on every front, and you can't pretend that LA is just a city in the west, on the West Coast. No, what happens in the state of California is actually tested there, and then it's proliferated all over the country.
That is a stunning answer, and so bone chilling to see the greater overall architecture of how this works. And it's why we won't give up on this. And it's easy to just say we'll abandon it and dump it into the ocean in California, and maybe we should make it a territory again. That'd be really fun. But this is something that really does have a lot of meaning to the rest of the nation and to Western civilization as a whole. This is what is the quote from Stephen Miller? The fight for Western civilization will be lost or won on the streets of LA. And so it's something to not give up, and we shouldn't give up anything to the communists. The communists should get nothing. You get nothing. Laura, I wanted to just given your background with 60 Minutes, I wanted to just give you one opportunity here in closing to sound off on some of the hysterical histrionics of 60 Minutes presenters like Scott Pelley or Anderson Cooper on their way out as 60 Minutes gets changed. They are throwing many temper tantrums over there. What's your take on this?
Well, it breaks my heart in many ways because 60 Minutes used to be the gold standard for journalism and investigative journalism and storytelling worldwide. It's very difficult to do 60 Minutes well. It really is a unique form of storytelling where every word is supposed to count. And if you do it properly, it brings investigation and characters and images and great writing. It brings everything together. And there are some wonderful people who have worked at 60 Minutes over the years, and probably still some great people there now. But if you have no moral courage, and if you are not honest in your work, then what you do loses all of its value. If you go a step beyond that, where you actually participate in the conspiracy, then you have gone to the point of sedition. When you put people on television that talk about insurrection and you don't challenge them in the context of January 6th, you're not doing your job. You are doing a great disservice to the American people. You are disrespecting and disregarding the American people. If I can find Victoria White, then everyone at 60 Minutes can find Victoria White, right? And the woman who was beaten so badly on January 6th. And so my point is that there's no excuse for not doing your job. This isn't an isolated story. They didn't come out. I would have had respect for for the show that I love so much if they had come out when all the evidence came out and said, you know what, Russia collusion was a conspiracy and it was wrong and it was corrupt. And here is the truth. But there was no reckoning there. And it really surprises me in many ways. I know I shouldn't be surprised. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. But I just still cannot believe, because it's such a powerful thing when you truly and utterly believe and you give your life. It's to being a real journalist, and it's in your DNA, it's in the air that you breathe, it's everything that you do, and you work with great people like that. I mean, I work with some of the best people possible, but instead what you get is people that literally attack Ron DeSantis about, they say, because he hasn't put enough vaccine clinics in black neighborhoods because he's trying to kill black people from COVID. Are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind? You have literally lost touch with reality. First of all, it's not even accurate because the vaccine was available, the kill shot was available in every Publix, in a store in Florida. And so even the math that they did about access was a lie. But how could you do that? How could you do a story about Bill Gates, inflating Bill Gates, making him out to be this great man and this great philanthropist, and you never ask him about the young girls in India who were sterilized as a result of his vaccines? You don't ask him about the kids in Sudan who are disabled. Okay, I grew up in Africa. I'm one of the few journalists that actually went to Sudan during the conflict there, which is now, I think, resumed. I've been all over that country. And I can tell you, because I've been all over that continent and worked all over. When you're in a village in Africa and you're disabled, do you know how much help you get? Nothing. There's nothing for you. Your life is pretty much relegated to the bottom of society. You exist only on the love of your family and the people around you. But so the destruction of people's lives by Bill Gates, and 60 Minutes puts him on, and they don't even challenge him on any of this. He was sanctioned by the parliament in India and banned until he talked his way, bought his way back into the country. And 60 Minutes did nothing about that. And I could go on it. I mean, the election integrity, good Lord above. You're going to take Chris Krebs, an operative and a puppet. Remember when he was head of CISA? Do you remember the role that 60 Minutes played in cementing the cover-up of the stolen election in 2020? When all of this was going nuts, right? And Trump wasn't accepting the result, and everyone in conservative media, places like Fox, was under pressure to come out and publicly accept the result. And there were Republican leaders that were going on the floor of the House and they were saying, Trump lost, and trying to force all of us to buy the lie. What did 60 Minutes do? They put Chris Krebs, the head of CISA, on, and the Critical Infrastructure Agency that was charged supposedly with securing the election. And you know what he said? He said those fatal words: the most secure election in history. Remember that? So think about the role that 60 Minutes was playing there. Chris Krebs, I knew people working for Chris Krebs in the run up to the election. They were reporting fraud and anomalies that were happening prior to the vote, and they were being shut down. So that just tells you that, with all that stuff at 60 Minutes, all that money, because they get paid, I mean, millions of dollars at the top and very well all the way down. They have access to lawyers. They have access to broadcast associates, interns, associate producers. I mean, they have access to the entire news division. They have all the money in the world. They have all the time in the world. They don't have to worry about doing ads, Benny, like you're doing in between segments. They don't have to do that. They don't have to worry about sponsorships and subscriptions. Everything is paid for these people. Everything is paid for. When I see someone like Kirsten Welke saying to the president, you know how far I had to travel? Are you serious?
On a private jet with 20 producers and a makeup person?
Serious?
And a lunch caterer, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and a limo to take you wherever you need to go, and people phoning all over you, and give me a break. I mean, I just all I can think is that if you go back, there will be people who say, "Oh, she's the Benghazi girl," I mean, she's the one who got it wrong, all the rest of it, and she's the one who got canceled, and she's bitter. It really is not. That is not the case at all. In fact, there was no journalistic reason at the end of the day for CBS to get rid of me. So they couldn't fire me. That's the truth of what really happened there. And I don't need to relitigate that. But what I am so sad about is I think that was the beginning of the destruction of 60 Minutes. After me, they went after Jeff Fager, the executive producer, who was an unbelievably talented, amazing journalist and a great boss. And then they began to systematically dismantle the moral courage of the show and of the people who work there. Not their talent, they're still very talented. Not their work ethic, they still work very hard. But it took their moral courage. And so what it does is it encourages people to be cowards. And that is what happened to 60 Minutes. Now, some of them go beyond that, right? Some of them go beyond that to where they're actively pushing, like, I don't know why people that are still pushing the narrative that January 6th was an insurrection. It's absolutely incredible to me. But I can tell you this. I have a friend who works with vaccine injured. He spent so many years trying to get them coverage at 60 Minutes. He would call me over and over again because when he would send out those press releases of people whose entire lives had been destroyed, some of whom were paralyzed, confined to wheelchairs, people whose children died. People whose children died. And do you know that those emails would remain unread? They wouldn't even touch them, or they just would ignore them, because a show where people are supposedly, they occupy this position where we're the fourth estate, right? We're the guardians of the First Amendment. That's why the New York Times is the gray lady, and we're the mighty 60 Minutes. I mean, you heard comments about, I don't think the president's done what I've done. I've been to war, right? You heard those comments. I mean, nobody can tell me about going to war. I lived 5 years in Baghdad at the height of the war. I lived years in Afghanistan. I mean, I would go from Iraq to Sudan to Darfur to the war there and go back to Baghdad. Okay, and then I would go to Kabul and go to the war there. And I didn't live in the green zone. I didn't parachute in and out. And I'm not saying I'm any better. I'm not. All I'm saying is when we are journalists, we're just witnesses. And yes, we pay a price. There are journalists who pay with their lives. And there are journalists who are very, very brave. But that doesn't give us the right. Like I spent, 2 months with Navy SEALs. So does that make me a Navy SEAL? You know what I mean? I mean, they were going on high value target raids, and they were the ones actually in the fight. I wasn't in the fight. I was there just to witness, and they actually risked their lives to keep me and every other journalist alive. So, I mean, I walked 3.5, 4 months pregnant through sewage canals for for a month in Helmand Province. I went 8.5 months pregnant to the mountains of Afghanistan at a forward operating base on the Pakistan-Afghan border at 10,000 feet. I'm not telling you this because I'm saying I'm so great. I'm telling you this because if anyone knows about combat reporting and being a war correspondent, I know what I'm talking about. So when I say to people, don't dishonor these soldiers by putting yourself on the same level. Don't pretend that you served because you didn't serve. Okay, that is not the same thing. That is not the same kind of service. No, what you got is you got accolades and awards, and you got paid millions of dollars, and you got to go out and opine and disregard the American people. You know, you got to do all of that as well. And so it's, to me, it's insulting to the soldiers. I'm not dishonoring the sacrifices of every single journalist who've ever been out there. You know, great people like João Silva, who lost both his legs as a photographer for the New York Times. My amazing friend Chris Hondros, who was killed in Libya. You know, that Sean and Paul Douglas, you know, who were killed covering the war in Iraq and Baghdad. I mean, there are many. The list is many, but that doesn't. That what we do. Sure, it's brave. Sure, it's dangerous, but it's not the same thing. Don't say that you served because you didn't live and walk with the weight of combat in every single step and every single decision that you made. You didn't live for years without your family. You didn't, you know, I mean, there's so many things that I could say about this, having not just lived on the battlefields, but also lived, I'm married to a soldier. I know the cost. I know what that price looks like because I've seen it. I've seen it up close, not just in him, but in all the many people that come through our door. And I just, I cannot believe the hubris of putting ourselves on the same level. We are very fortunate. I thank God every day that I was given the opportunity to witness what I have seen and that I was able to come home with all my fingers and toes and intact. But that doesn't make me a soldier or a warrior. I'm not.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you needed a explanation as to why you should subscribe to Laura Logan, not only on X, but on her brand new podcast, Going Rogue with Laura Logan, that, well, is far better than anything I could ever conjure up. My poor capacity to explain why you should subscribe to Laura. Thank you so much for joining the program and for your deep analysis and feeling on all of this, because it comes from a well of experience, and we appreciate that. Godspeed, Laura. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benny. I appreciate it very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have the flip right here on Polymarket. You can see the data. The flip. Somebody always knows, man. On election night, you can see that Spencer Pratt and Karen Bass had a 76% chance of making it to the runoff. And then election day happened, and there was a flip. This is still while Nikki Raman was well below any conceivable replacement rate for her votes. There's no historic precedent for this. Statistically, mathematically, impossible. Somebody always knows. I think this would be a great place for them to start, ladies and gentlemen, looking at who knew what and when. Ladies and gentlemen, here's what I know, that if you are somebody who's a betting man, if you're somebody who's wealthy, or if you're somebody who's rich or come from a good family, then you're not going to buy depreciating assets. You're going to buy things that appreciate. That's why rich people buy property and land and art and gold. You can buy gold. I can't afford a Monet, right? I can't afford a Van Gogh. Rich people can, but you can afford gold, small amounts. That's what I own. But it's physical, it's real, and it appreciates over time. It does not depreciate. And the appreciation for gold has been exponential as nation states and very rich people are buying. You should get in today. If something's paper, then it's losing value on inflation every single year. You're not building a legacy. You're handing your offspring a melting piece of ice. Gold has been money for 5,000 years. It's held value across all empires that have ever existed. I trust Advantage Gold to carry us through. I'm giving my listeners a free gold investment kit, absolutely free. Text Benny to 85545. That's BENNY to 85545 today. You'll discover how diversifying into gold, especially in your retirement, is really a winning strategy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our winning strategy is pray. That's it on the show. 1 Peter 3:10. is our prayer today. Verse of the day. Whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech. Don't lie. Become allergic to lying. You know, there's like a difference in us energetically, like screaming about the news and wanting to deliver the most entertaining product as possible with outright deceit, lying, and theft, which is what the California election is. A lie. It's a lie. It's a lie that we can all see and nobody can prove because the systems themselves make it so that you can't do that. But if you want to see good days, get rid of the lies. Call them out. Use your lips to call out deceitful speech and evil when you can. And that's what we've done for 2.5 hours, ALX and Klein. Holy moly. We'll leave you with that today. It's your boy Benny. March with us on to victory. We're going to keep on winning because we're going to keep on fighting. And because Christ is King and the Lord is with us. Thank you for joining us on this show. See ya.
The truth gon' be faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies. Watch the truth cascade with the warrior's heart. This man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. From the speeches to debates, Benny sharp like a blade, cutting through the lies. Watch the truth cascade with the warrior's heart. This man never fades. You know it's prime time when Benny invades. From saving the nation to stories untold, the Benny Show's a storm, see the truth unfold. Stay in the loop, let freedom take hold. Salting all the libs, soul never sold. It's the Benny Show, where the truth gon' be faith and freedom on your TV screen. Stand up strong, battle through the night. The Benny Show's here, bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light. Bringing liberty to light.